What's up, family? Did you miss us? I hope so, because we sure miss you guys. Couple disclaimers before we get started. Yes, I realize that it's 100 degrees outside and I have a toboggan on. I'm dealing with a slight head cold, so you guys pray for me. Do not pick on me. Don't hit me in the comment section to tell me how hot it is outside. I already know. But it doesn't matter. Like, I'm sitting in the house. It's 100 degrees outside, and it might be 101 in my house because I'm trying to sweat this thing out as quickly as possible. My voice may not sound like it normally does, but you guys pray for me. Hit me up in the comment section. Give me some encouragement. Do whatever you got to do to keep me going and everything. But fortunately, I bought reinforcements, and you're going to see them in a second. We got a 53-man roster to talk about. That's why you guys didn't see us on Monday. We figured it was probably ridiculous to do a show on Monday, then come on here on Tuesday and talk about things that, 24 hours later had nothing to do with what we talked about on Monday. So we gave it some rest. We refocused. We set a strategy up. We're ready to roll. Because if you're just like us, we're just as excited as we can be about this Philadelphia Eagles season. It's hard not to do things like start talking about stuff like jinxes and possible trips to the Super Bowl. I'm trying not to book tickets and things of that nature, but I don't fear the Dallas Cowboys. I don't fear the Seattle Seahawks. Definitely don't fear the San Francisco 49ers because I may be alone in this, but I actually think Seattle wins the NFC West. That's where I'm going. And who the hell cares about the NFC South and the North, right? So I was talking to my guys, and we said, what could we possibly talk about to kind of get things hyped up? Oh, yeah, there's a roster. So as we were going through this, and shout out to Zach Berman, who actually went so far as to make a spreadsheet, something I had no idea that I wanted to do. But Zach put it together for us. What you see here isn't necessarily what we're going to see when we walk into week one of the regular season, but we got all night to dissect this, and we're going to have fun doing it. My question is, how do you feel right now if you're Michael Clay? Seriously, you have no punter. You have no punt returner. You got a couple guys on the practice squad now. We brought Aaron Sipos back, but he's on the practice squad, so he's barely hanging on to a roster spot. My guess is they'll elevate him about 3 times during the course of the season, so, you can buy yourself some time so we can maybe get somebody else in here. Maybe they go after the point guard. Maybe they don't. I saw 2 guys that looked impressive in Green Bay, and as impressive they are, I didn't take time to even remember what their names were. But I remember saying to myself, maybe the loser of that battle can actually come to Philadelphia. Jake Elliott's punted in relief sometimes, but Jake Elliott's punt traveled about 35 yards. Anything you need kicked, Jake Elliott can kick it. But then again, is 35 yards really a bad punt when your actual punter only kicks the ball about 10 yards past that? You never know. If I'm Michael Clay, I'm upset right now because your punt returner is gone. And the best one you had is a crash test dummy. Your best special teamers are on injured reserve. Sean Bradley's hurt. You got Zach McPherson hurt. And we'll talk about a new guy who showed up, Isaiah Rodgers, who was signed and immediately added to the commissioner's suspension list. But he might be your best kick returner. There's only one problem. He doesn't play until 2024. Got a lot to talk about. We got all kind of angles that we can hit this from. And thankfully, because my voice is about to go out after just 5 minutes of speaking, I'm going to rely on my brothers from other mothers. I got Jaleel and Travis, the Williams brothers. How y'all fellas doing tonight, man?
Good. It's a good night. Ready to talk some birds after we got that 53-man roster out. Let's go.
Yeah,
Travis,
I'm doing well too.
The Prince of Darkness is in the building.
Yes. Doing well. I need to work something out here in the next couple of weeks. Get some better lighting in here. Get something that doesn't shine from behind me. But yeah, I'm doing well. I would hope the Eagles have a plan. They consulted Michael Clay before just cutting everyone on special teams on him like that. But yeah, I'm excited to dive into it.
All right, man. We got a lot to talk about. Before you guys came on, I was talking a little bit about special teams. Now we got a 53-man roster, which we're probably going to be digesting for most of the evening here. We got, no surprise there, Jalen Hurts, Marcus Mariota, Tanner McKee at the quarterback position. We've seen the Eagles carry 2 quarterbacks before, but no reason to do that with somebody like Tanner McKee on the roster because he probably would have got snatched up by somebody else. The 4 running backs, surprise to some, probably shouldn't be, but 4 wide receivers, that'll change. 4 tight ends, which is a concern. And even though we've been calling him Albert O, fellas, I'm going to go ahead and be the brave one. I'm going to go ahead and try to do this. Aquegbianam is what I think his name is. Didn't know much about him other than the fact that, he was pretty good in Missouri. I remember he was part of the first team All SEC rookie squad or whatever. And I remember him being a 2-time All SEC nod, but I think that was on the second team. The offensive line looks as we thought. We're stacked at the interior of the defensive line. We were thinking maybe like 3 guys. They gave us a ton. Edge guys, linebackers, cornerbacks, safeties, special teamers, but no punter, but that got taken care of today because we'll talk about the practice squad in a moment. Want to get you guys' opinion. First glance, what are you thinking as you're checking out the 53-man roster when you guys saw it for the first time?
I was surprised at the number of defensive tackles on the team and the 4 tight ends, 4 wide receivers thing. It's just weird to me. I don't know that we need that many defensive tackles. I know Fletcher's a year older and we lost Hargrave and everything, but obviously we drafted Jalen Carter. That's obvious. And I really like Milton Williams and some of those other guys. I don't know that 7 right now. I mean, obviously, I'm going to trust the Eagles to do what they're going to do because they've been doing a great job lately. But that's just what jumped out to me as something a little peculiar, we'll say.
Did you guys see
Yeah,
that?
the four wide receivers jumped out to me a little bit too. But, that's something where as the season goes on, you'll definitely probably see someone get elevated from the practice squad, whether if it's Ward, Covey. And, yeah, Kentavious Street being on the roster as a defensive tackle, that stuck out to me as well. I felt like, you have your starters solidified in your top 3 of Cox, Carter, and Davis, and then you got your younger guys like Milton Williams and Ojomo that you're trying to bring in kind of gradually. It kind of just felt like he was the odd man out, especially to go 7 deep at defensive tackle. But other than that, there wasn't a whole lot of surprises. I felt like I've heard some people be really up in the air about 3 linebackers, but that didn't really surprise me. It felt like that was something that was kind of coming more or less after, Miles Jack retires early, and there hasn't really been much to talk about throughout training camp. And the last thing is Eli Ricks making the roster. I mean, that might not be a surprise, but it certainly is nice to see a feel-good story of the preseason kind of get a nice, satisfying end to the summer like that.
Yep. Good stuff from both of you guys as always. Now we have a chance to talk about their roster in detail and everything because I got a few theories about what I think might happen because that's obviously not going to be the squad we're going to see when we walk into Foxborough to play the New England Patriots. Doubt that seriously. But when you have a combined things working for you, like 48 guys who are available to you on game day, 5 guys who are not dressing, elevations that you can make from the practice squad. Probably see a little bit of what we saw last year, guys stuck on the practice squad and then elevated for game day action. And then once we reach the maximum 3 elevations and things of that nature, that may force Philly to make a decision. Or like in the case of maybe like a Sip-Oss, there's probably another situation where we can talk about where, let's just say, for instance, Sip-Oss is elevated 3 times and they find somebody else. Maybe they can then make a decision about him then at that point, whether they want to keep him long-term or whether they want to go with another option. The one thing I will say that is confident is like Sip-Oss in September is a whole lot better than Sip-Oss in January. Like while the weather's still warm outside and things of that nature, he's pinning guys inside the 10-yard line. He's doing all kinds of stuff. The punts are traveling 50 yards. It's when things tend to get cold is when he tends to fall off. If I'm wrong about that, are y'all seeing the same thing?
No, I got to agree with that too. And, you saw him get the later season injury last year too, and maybe his whole body just becomes brittle once the weather kind of turns on us. But I got to agree with that.
Cool deal.
Yep, same.
All right, so one of the key acquisitions that came right before the deadline for trimming I think it went from 90 to 70 over the weekend, if I'm not mistaken, and then from 70 to 53 between the weekend and Tuesday, was the addition of Isaiah Rodgers, who, as you guys know, is a former Colt and has some history with your head coach. So thing we like about him is speed guy. Does give you like some another cover guy that, worst case scenario is probably about the same level as some of your backups and your reserves and things of that nature. But I'm thinking the thing that the Eagles probably love about him most is the fact that he has return skills. The only issue we have is he's also on the suspension list because he decided he wanted to make a little extra cash on these games. Which I got whole other theories about this all the time. Like, I'm tired of the NFL suspending these guys for gambling, and then every time I'm watching the game, I'm seeing a commercial trying to convince me to do so every 15 minutes. But that's another story for another day. That's my theory. But how you guys feeling about the Isaiah Rodgers edition?
Look, I gotta say, I'm more mad at the guys for getting suspended for it, just because. Yeah, because you know it, you know the rule. Just don't do it. It's stupid. I agree. It's a dumb rule. It should be changed. That doesn't change the fact that the rule is the rule, and if they catch you, they're going to suspend you for a very long time. On the first offense. So I'm gonna need these guys just to not do it. But I think it's a smart pickup by Howie, because obviously he is still really young, and if I remember correctly, he was really like a top 10 corner. Like, he's really good. So I think it's a great pickup, a good stash. It's a very forward thinking. So I like it a lot.
Yeah, I got to agree with that. It's a little bit of maybe a gamble to bring him in, but he sits for a whole season and he comes back, and worst comes to worst, we just go back to that narrative that was pushed all summer of iron sharpens iron. And if he can push some of the younger guys and kind of create competition at the bottom of the roster, I mean, maybe even play as a returner next year. It's definitely no such thing as a bad acquisition when it's someone who's not going to count against the 53-man roster or take up a spot on the practice squad, and has a lot of upside, and hopefully still has his best football ahead of him.
3 seasons in NFL, 2020 to 2022 with the Indianapolis Colts. I don't have it in front of me. I think it was a 6th round selection. I had to double check that though, so don't quote me on that. But 5'10", 170 pounds. So we're probably talking about a slot receiver there. I don't think I want to put him outside against Devontae Adams or anybody of that nature, or DK Metcalf or something. But 45 games in the NFL, played a full season in 2021, 10 starts. From the defensive standpoint, 90 tackles, 3 interceptions, 10 pass breakups, a forced fumble, 2 fumble recoveries. Actually, 4 fumble recoveries. Hadn't used him in any blitz situations, but 1,006 defensive snaps on his career, 494 special team snaps, and the thing that we were talking about, which may be the main reason why he's here, as a kick returner. Like we talked about, maybe I think like the last time all 3 of us were together, like somebody that can make the first guy miss and then got straight line speed, which is really what a kick returner needs. So looks like here 61 returns, 1,645 yards. Has a touchdown on the resume, but that was back in 2020. But again, nice acquisition. I agree with you. Travis looks like somebody that we could stash. Not necessarily have to dedicate a roster spot to, and then we can actually use him later. But he ain't available to you until 2024. It doesn't really help you much this year.
Yep.
No.
Yeah, he's rated high on Pro Football Focus too, and like his run defense and his coverage grades. He's a solid player.
Cool deal. All right, fellas. Something I saw that was interesting and things of that nature. I don't know if it necessarily qualifies as the best story of the week, but we're going to go ahead and give it the nod anyway. Best stories of the week. I ain't really hate to kick men when they're down and everything, man, but it's the NFL and it just is what it is. Once upon a time, the Philadelphia Eagles decided they were going to go out and they were going to get themselves a wide receiver. We thought it might be, like Travis and I were talking backstage before the show started, we thought that guy might be CeeDee Lamb. The Cowboys jumped in front of us and made sure that wasn't going to happen. Then we was like, oh, snap, we still got a shot at Justin Jefferson. And then Howie Roseman made sure that wasn't going to happen. Now, y'all know I got my thing about Aaron Moorhead and stuff like that. Like, I talk about these coaches all the time, and Aaron Moorhead is probably my least favorite because I feel like a lot of the things he gets credit for is the fact that he got a couple of guys that just were going to be great whether he was there or not. But my thing when I start evaluating wide receivers coaches is, does he make those marginal guys or those below average guys better? And I've never seen him do that. So that's my issues with Aaron Moorhead. But I also have another issue with Moorhead because I was actually reminded of a conversation I was having with somebody else. He actually played with Jalen Reagor's father, and he might have been a big reason why Jalen Reagor was here. So On that alone, I think evaluation skills, I think he should probably be exited to the nearest exit. I said that, you guys didn't. The opinions of this next statement are just the opinions of Jeff, like Travis and Jaleel had nothing to do with this. Don't email them or hit them up on X. Hit me up if you're going to hit somebody. But Jalen Reagor ends up on the squad. You know what happens. Justin Jefferson goes a pick later. Justin Jefferson becomes a star and eventually the offensive MVP of the league. Jalen Reagor's never going to do that. In some kind of way, after a trade, they end up as teammates. And a little over a year later, Jalen Reagor is gone. And a couple of days ago, well, actually this morning, we started hearing about this was a possibility the day before yesterday, but this morning, the Minnesota Vikings cut Jalen Reagor. So he's gone. He's looking for a job now. JJ Arcega-Whiteside, somebody else you guys may have heard about. Somebody that Howie sometimes gets blamed for, but I ain't Howie. That was actually Howie. That was actually the boss's pick, Jeffrey Lurie. J-Jaw is gone. He was on the Falcons roster. I actually didn't know that until I saw him released. And Sidney Jones, who I also didn't know was with the Cincinnati Bengals. For some reason, I don't know why still thought he was in Seattle. But Sidney Jones gets cut by the Cincinnati Bengals. Jalen Reagor, J-Jaw, and Sidney Jones, former high draft picks of the Philadelphia Eagles, are now out of the league for the time being. They may end up on a roster at some point, but that ain't the case right now.
Yeah, you know, those guys, especially Sidney Jones, for me, I kind of hoped he would turn out to be something special. But listen, these are how we wrote. They fall at Howie's feet. You know what I'm saying? He made the selection, except the J Jaw one. You said that's Lori. That's fine. But he's just earned himself such a grace. How he has with the way he's built this team continuously over the past 6-7 years or so. All the moves that he continues to make to be aggressive, to make sure the Eagles are a good, entertaining team that has a chance to fight for the playoffs. I forgive you, Howie. You know, I forgive you for some of these picks that a lot of us knew at the time would not work out. Marcus Smith, don't even get me started. But
that was Chip though, right?
Was it?
We got to put Marcus on Chip.
Okay, we're gonna put Marcus on Chip.
Yeah, we got to put Marcus on Chip.
Okay, all right. But
if you put a couple snafus here and there, like on the back burner, Howie's drafts aren't that bad, with the exception of 2017. 2017 was awful.
Right. Exactly.
Talking about it.
Exactly. So, like I said, the point still stands. Howie's been great overall, so he's earned himself the right to have some misses in there.
Yeah, I got to agree with you about Sidney Jones. That was a guy who, it kind of felt like it was meant to be. He was someone who was mocked to us potentially going in the first round of 2017, and then he blew out his Achilles at his pro day at Washington. And when he fell to us in the second round, it kind of felt like a no-brainer, but he's one of those guys where, you see sometimes they get injured on their pro day or during like the process leading up to the draft. And for one reason or another, it just makes the transition to the NFL that much harder. And he kind of at least will always have that to fall back on. Was he was a first round guy. He got hurt. We took him in the second round, where Jalen Reagor and JJ Arcega-Whiteside, that's just, how do you pass on some guys that were still on the board in those spots? But no GM bats 1,000, and sometimes we can be a little too hard on Howie. And like you said, Jaleel, we definitely got a pretty good roster now to be happy with. And I've always felt like it was absolutely no coincidence that Howie traded Jalen Reagor to Justin Jefferson's team and traded Arcega-Whiteside to DK Metcalf's team. That was something that, from the minute it happened, it had to be intentional. He wanted them to sit there and think about what they could have been for the Eagles. But yeah, other than that, just
nobody
wants of an era.
Nobody can play the petty game like Howie Roseman.
No, do not want to be on that man's bad side ever.
Yeah. So I'm assuming that you guys aren't interested in maybe a reacquisition of Jalen Reagor or JJ Arcega-Whiteside or Sidney Jones in some capacity. Maybe Sidney Jones is your 6th or 7th cornerback. You guys not feeling that?
No.
Nah, that time is come and gone, and I'd rather see any of the three of us go try and return kicks and punts than see Jalen Rager suit back up in an Eagles uniform.
Exactly. You can't move on if you're always looking behind you. Keep it rolling.
All right, man. So I had a curveball I was going to throw to you guys as well and stuff like that. So, I'm always rocking with you guys, and, we have our debates on and off camera and things of that nature, but wanted to talk about that 2017 draft class for a while. This is one of the ones kind of don't know how I was thinking. In 2017, the Eagles took 8 players. Only one of them is still on the roster. His name is Derek Barnett. Sidney Jones was a second-round guy. Rasul Douglas, if I'm not mistaken, is still in Green Bay. Mac Hollins is somewhere. Donnell Pumphrey, Shelton Gibson, Nathan Jerry, and Elijah Qualls are all out of the league. So first 4 guys proved to be NFL players. 2 of them are not. Actually, 3 of them are not here. And the one we got left is Derek Barnett, who you so eloquently wrote in the article, Jaleel, was one of the 3 guys that you actually thought would make the roster, but should not have done so. And the reason I'm asking that is because right after that, we saw a situation where Drew Rosenhaus was given permission to seek trade value for Derek Barnett and doesn't seem like it's doing too well. My question is, on top of other things, wanted to ask you about your story. And also, my thing is, I think we're kind of stuck with Derek Barnett. And I don't know if that's a good thing or bad thing. And the reason I say that is because that Nolan Smith shoulder injury seems to be worse than what we thought it was. Now, he returned to practice today, and it looked like he was a full participant. I didn't get to see a whole lot of it because we were preparing for this. But he missed about 15 practice sessions, what I understand, or 15 days, somewhere in that nature. But then there was some situations about where they were saying that, it was a precautionary measure. Then they were saying that, well, it might be a little bit more serious than it was because it's connected to that pec injury that he had. So are we worried about Nolan Smith? And Jaleel, do we really need to move on from Derek Barnett as of yet? Because if he isn't ready to go, and that's one of your 4th guys in the edge rush rotation, do we need him for more snaps if Nolan Smith isn't ready by the time we hit week 1?
So on the Nolan Smith thing, I think anytime they tell you that it's minor, but then it ends up keeping the guy out for an extended period, you have to at least show a little bit of concern. So, and that's obviously the case in this situation. So, yes, I'm a little concerned. I'm encouraged though that he has the time now. We still have about 11 or 12 days before the first game, and he's having a full practice, full go. That's encouraging. So if that continues and he has no setbacks and leading up to the game, then all right, I'm good to go. But right now, yes, I'm showing a bit of concern with Nolan Smith. As far as Derek Barnett goes, I hate to say it, but yes, holding on to him for now might be the smart play because of the Nolan Smith thing. But if you go through you go through this next week, and Nolan Smith is okay, the doctors say he's good to go, then yeah, consider if you can make one of those last minute trades and get something for Derek Barnett before the season starts. We know how it's not above those last minute trades, but I feel like it's addition by subtraction with getting rid of Derek Barnett. And he doesn't want to be here now anyway, it sounds like. So good, right on time. I'm ready to move on from him. He's been underwhelming. His sack numbers were decreasing year after year before he got injured last year and missed the entire season. So I don't know that I expect him to come back after missing a full year and just have some type of spectacular year. He already wasn't doing that. So that's why I'm just ready to move on from him.
What you think, Travis? You liking the edge rushers as it currently stands, or you getting rid of Derek Barnett, keeping him, or you worried about Nolan Smith? How you feeling?
Well, with Nolan Smith, I'm gonna take a little more of an optimistic route and hope that the shoulder injury might be related to his pec injury. Hopefully, that's just all speculation and that's just hearsay. And he says his shoulder's fine, and hopefully the Eagles are just being a little precautious with him anyway. And I think like if you look back to last season, what we kind of did with Jordan Davis and the Kobe Dean on defense, they were guys who, even though they were really talented rookies or highly sought rookies and did really well in college, they didn't really play much as rookies, and they preferred to kind of keep in some of the veteran guys. And I think Nolan Smith, just with how deep the edge rusher position is, might have not played a whole lot anyway, and might have even seen some snaps at kind of that off ball linebacker, like kind of alongside or in place into Kobe Dean on some snaps, which he did a few times over training camp. But, hopefully if he's got to miss a couple weeks, it is what it is. As long as it's the injury concerns, we can just put the shoulder injury behind him whenever he does come back to being 100%. Hopefully he's still ready by week 1. We still do have over a week left. And then as for Derek Barnett, that was a guy who, first round pick, we saw that at Tennessee, he broke Reggie White's sack record, but he ended up being closer to a Marcus Smith 2.0. And I think right now the Eagles are kind of handcuffed to him, because former first round pick, if you go and release him, someone's going to take a chance on him. And if he ends up playing well somewhere else just because he's got a larger role and we end up kind of suffering from some injuries, then it's like it does make you look bad a little bit. But like Jaleel said, he does have his numbers are trending in the wrong direction for someone who should be coming into their own in the league. And it sucks to think, he was drafted before TJ Watt was. And hopefully we don't have to use him too much, because sometimes he kind of tends to be the personification of a roughing the passer penalty. But it's fine for now. I really feel indifferent to Barnett. I'd be fine if he just kind of is in a backup role, rotational role all season, walks in free agency next spring. I don't think he's someone that we.
But remember, Travis, it's Jalil.
Jalil, my bad. Yes, my bad.
It's all good, yes, bro.
Jalil.
I'm gonna give you two things. Like, first of all, fantastic work as always, Travis. Like I could not have enunciated that better myself. I have my brother add one thing. I am obligated by law, anytime somebody says that Derek Barnett broke Reggie White's sack record, to also add the disclaimer that I want us to also remember that Derek Barnett played 17 more games in Tennessee than Reggie White did.
It's a lot of games, especially in college.
Huh?
It's a lot of games, especially in college, man. They don't play 17 game seasons.
Jared Mintz says, no punter. What are your thoughts, guys? We're going to get to you right in like 2 seconds, Jared. Give us 1 second. We got one Eagles-related, non-related topic left, and then we're going to jump into the 53-man roster and pick it apart. But one last thing I saw that was interesting, guys, and some of the best stories of the week was Kayvon Wallace and Josh Seals find new homes. Both of them were waived by the Philadelphia Eagles, which means they had to clear the waivers in order to even have a chance of getting back to the Eagles. 30 teams had to say no to them, and then you had to get to the Philadelphia Eagles at 31. That wasn't even an option because Kayvon Wallace ends up with his former defensive coordinator and our new head coach, Jonathan Gannon, in Arizona. Josh Seals ends up in Indianapolis with his former offensive coordinator, Shane Steichen. So 2 former Eagles who I actually was thinking Kayvon Wallace had turned the corner and may have had a shot at getting the roster and everything. I was seeing him get first team snaps, but as time went on, Justin Evans just got better and Sidney Jones started to make his mark and Kayvon Wallace went back to being Kayvon Wallace. It's almost like he looked up and realized he remembered who he was. So
yeah, what a weird trajectory for Kayvon Wallace. I don't have much on the Josh Sales front. It's just not a move that a situation, a player that really moves me. He didn't make the roster. All right, deuces. Wish you the best in Indy. But the Kayvon Wallace thing is fascinating to me because when he was drafted, I don't know what y'all heard, but I was hearing people say that he might be the next Brian Dawkins. People were extremely excited about this kid,
yeah.
And he comes in and he's just not good, and so he sits. He's on the bench all the time. Anytime he does get in the game, it's embarrassing. But then this training camp, it seemed like he was turning things around, and he's, like you said, getting first team reps, it, and then he gets cut. I don't know. It's just kind of fascinating to me. But him going to Jonathan Gannon, I don't know what Jonathan Gannon see, because Jonathan Gannon couldn't get anything out of him when he was here, So I don't know why he wants him over there. But Jonathan Gannon does what JG does, right? He's kind of an odd dude.
Yeah, I kind of when I first I saw, I think it was Ian Rappaport tweeted like the whole list of waiver moves from like late last night and earlier today, and I just went on to see like what teams, so if the Eagles added anyone or someone got picked up from the Eagles, and that was when I first saw too that I've heard. I'm gonna take a stab at the name too, that we got from Denver. I've heard people say it's Albert Okwuegbunam, but I don't know. That kind of leaves out the B in there. But I don't know. We'll have to see how the announcers handle it during the season too. It'll be interesting.
I've heard of
That was
me
when I
as
first.
well. Like I just decided I was just gonna go rogue and go Okwuegbunam. Like I'm just gonna just change the guy's name.
That sounds odd, but like how it's spelled, that kind of sounds closer.
Yeah.
But,
Albert O.
yeah, hard, exactly, Alberto.
I'm just gonna go with
But
Albert. Yeah, just keep it right there, Albert, until I hear for sure. I'm not even going to attempt this. I don't want to do it to myself. It sounds crazy.
yeah, but so that was also, I saw that about Wallace and Sills getting picked up, and it makes sense. Steichen brings in an offensive guy that we had, and Gannon brings in a defensive guy that we had. But I think the Colts, considering the season that they had last year, they had to be pretty high on the waiver order to claim Josh Sills. So that kind of stuck out to me, and it goes back to what we said about the Eagles keeping him on, even though he was on the commissioner's exempt list, and to just not outright cut him when he first had his allegations against him. To not cut him outright kind of shows that he probably did have some talent somewhere. And the Colts are a team where they kind of need as much help as they can get on offense. They should definitely be taking it when you got a rookie quarterback. You don't know who's going to be your running back, and if it's someone who already knows what Steichen's trying to do, especially you see the Eagles, they are potentially the kings of when it comes to coaching offensive linemen in the NFL, and maybe Steichen's trying to take as much as that to Indy as he can. And then Kayvon Wallace, yeah, a lot of people did make the Clemson connection with him and Brian Dawkins, but I mean that's really where the similarities ended. It was a nice pickup in day 3 of the draft when we got him, and he didn't really do much here, didn't pan out too much. And I'd like to think, maybe they just kind of felt like what they had was Reed Blankenship and Sidney Brown and Justin Evans, and they just wanted to give Kayvon Wallace one last chance, and they just decided, it is indeed his time to go. And Jonathan Gannon, Kayvon Wallace is a really good player for Jonathan Gannon. They fit each other pretty well.
The thing about Kayvon with me, man, was like you guys said, I kind of heard the Brian Dawkins things too, and I just thought it was just about Clemson. But then he was decent at Clemson. Like he was one of those guys looked like he could play at the line of scrimmage. He looked like he could play deep. Looked like he could cover a slot guy if he needed to and everything. And none of that happened here. Like
did not translate at all.
Because I'm like, I saw flashes, especially last year when he got in the game. I felt like he could be decent, and I thought that when I saw him this year, it was like there's a chance that he could be decent. Never great, probably a valuable contributor on special team. He had the block punt in Denver. That same game with Darius Slay had the return on the fumble return. Yeah, big special teams play here and there. And I just thought, maybe eventually this guy can grow to be something decent. But the Eagles just kept bringing guys in to put in front of him, and then eventually it was just like, let's just give up on them and things of that nature. So with that, we move along to the guys that are here. And one of the questions that Jared Minch asked us was, no punter, what are your thoughts, guys? First thought I had when I looked at the roster was, I would love to be a fly on the wall with the coaches to see what the hell Michael Clay is saying right now. Because he got to be ticked off. Number one, your 6th corner, or in this case, your 6th and the 7th corner should be good special teams guys. Like, I don't see Eli Ricks and Mario Goodrich as special teams guys at all. I know we saw them in practice today trying to do it because they kind of have to, but your 6 cornerback should be a special teams guy. Like the Kentavious Street, man, like I went back and forth. Like, this is one of those things like we always talk about guys who are valued more by the league than they're valued by us. There seems to be a love affair with Kentavious Street, and I've heard rumors that if there's a situation where he needs to play on the outside, he can play both inside and outside, and that's doable. But I also heard that about Milton Williams. Milton Williams, I have never seen play on the outside ever, although I did see Fletcher Cox do it last year. And I think that kind of helped Fletcher Cox a little bit. It helped him with some production, but you got Cox, who we knew wasn't going anywhere, and then you got a bunch of kids. Jalen Carter, first year, Jordan Davis, second, Milton Williams, I think this is year 3 for him, right? Marlon Tui Pelotu, the same tenure as Milton Williams. Kentavious Street is a bit of a veteran. I think he's 27, and you got Moro Ojomo, a rookie. And as I think you so eloquently put it last time we talked, Jaleel, about Eli Ricks being somebody that you didn't want to put on the waiver wire because you were going to lose him. I feel that's the same reason that Moro Ojomo is on the active roster now. And again, guys, this is not what this is going to look like when we take the field in Foxborough. For instance, like you got Kentavious Street put on an inactive list. Maybe 1 or 2 of those guys can be put on the inactive list, but you got 48 guys who are actually going to dress on Sundays out of the 53. May not be Mario Goodrich. They'll probably suit all 4 of their safeties, maybe like sit an offensive lineman. Maybe you don't necessarily need Fred Johnson like on a game day. Who knows what this means as far as tight ends? I know they like Grant Calcaterra, but will they sit him or will they eventually get rid of him? But say in the case of it could sit this way, I'm assuming. Maybe they're thinking Grant Calcaterra because he got some receiving skills, but he can't block. Maybe he's the 5th wide receiver. He's just a big guy. But it's a lot of questions here. But the answer the question we had about the punter early in the broadcast, what we stated was, me personally, I believe putting Aaron Sipos back on the practice squad, which is where he is now. I believe that buys the Eagles some times. Maybe they go after the punt guard. He's out of his legal issue. Maybe they don't. But if you sit him on the practice squad and then you have the maximum of 3 elevations that you can elevate him for week 1, 2, and 3, maybe that gives you a situation where by the time you're at week 4, you're kind of seeing where he is. You can reevaluate him. Maybe you add him to the active roster at that point because you've already used your maximum 3 elevations. But Michael Clay is somewhere cussing right now, man. He ain't got a punter. He ain't got a punt returner. He technically doesn't have a holder for Jake Elliott, and he really doesn't have any special teams guys, and his 2 best special teams players are injured reserve. So I've always been hard on Michael Clay, but I don't even know how you could judge him fairly at this point.
Yeah. My thing about the punter situation is, well, let me do it like this. Earlier, I was watching one of those FS1 shows, First Things First, and interestingly, they were talking about the Patriots, right? And we have the Patriots in week 1. And what's interesting about the Patriots is that after their 53-man roster reveal, they don't have but 1 quarterback on the roster. Now, they picked up Malik Cunningham and Bailey Zappi and put him back on their practice squad. But as of now, they only have 53 men on the roster. And Eric Mangini's take on it was that and I think it could be something similar here, is a possibility of not wanting some of those other guys to hit the waiver wire. So you give yourself a chance to continue evaluating over the next week or so with one of the other guys that maybe, I don't know, we have 7 cornerbacks, we have 7 defensive tackles. Maybe some of those guys are not going to end up being here once week 1 actually, once that game actually rolls around. But because they think that they'd have a better chance of retaining Aaron Sipos through the waiver wire, like nobody's going to pick him up. So we'll go ahead and let him go through it and put him back on the practice squad later. So that's the type of thing that he discussed, that they're kind of doing it with the Bailey Zappi, Mac Jones situation, trying to evaluate their offensive linemen before they make a real decision. So that sounds like a feasible explanation to me. And I wouldn't be surprised if the Eagles were doing something like that. And I mean, I don't have a problem with it. Like it does also still, like you said, give the time to look around to see if there are any other punters, but you still have Aaron Sipos there if you need him. And through the early months, he should still be good, right? So hopefully we can figure that out before it gets cold.
Our buddy at Sports Illustrated, John McMullen, shout out to John McMullen. He says that his belief is they'll bring in punters to work out and things of that nature. That should be game plan number one. And then as a fallback and another option, what it might end up happening is if they don't see anything they like, they can just use the elevations on Aaron Sipos. But how you feeling, Travis? You feeling good about this, or what you got?
Yeah, yeah, it doesn't really bother me, like the season is still over a week away, and I really like that we were able to keep guys like Goodrich and Ricks and Jomo on the roster because those are guys who, even though they aren't just going to be starters, they're guys who still have a lot of really high upside considering how they came to this team, and definitely good to keep them off the waiver wire. And they're guys that probably won't dress, especially in the first couple of weeks. They'll probably be at least two of the five or three of the five. And if Sipos is there still on the practice squad and we haven't figured out who the guy is by then, we'll definitely use some elevations on him and hopefully don't just outright sign him for the whole season. And there are still some options here. Like I see Matt Hockey's still a guy who's on the free. He's a free agent punter right now. He was pretty good. Yeah, I see that Timothy's commenting Ariza, and
That's another vote for the punt
why
guy.
why not? If you're gonna say that, Josh Sills once he gets his allegations thrown out, what's the real difference at that point if you want to bring in Ariza and see if he's still good after taking a year off? And I wouldn't really be opposed to it, because you can work out as many guys as you want when it comes down to it, and only question becomes is when you work him out, who's going to be the return man for him? Because you could do two for one, work out return men when you come in, and you got a punter who's working out, you got a return man who's working out. Maybe bring in like I don't know, is it
Probably looking like the same
Robbie
thing. Look like
Chosen or Chosen Anderson now? I saw the Dolphins cut him.
Yeah, that's a good one. That's a good one. But it's looking like it might be the same thing with like Britton Covey. Like they're gonna use the elevations of him. So we got a practice squad here too. So you got Devin Allen, who they just want to believe is a football player, who is now 30. They say he loves football. I love football too, but I don't think I get a shot as being a part of a roster because of that. Britton Covey, Mekhi Gardner. There were times I actually had Mekhi Gardner ranked ahead of Mario Goodrich and Eli Ricks. But Eli Ricks made some splash plays in preseason and stuff. But he's a solid guy there. Julian Good-Jones. There's your backup center.
I believe in you, Devin Allen. I believe in you.
Tyrod Johnson, Tristan McCollum still here. Joseph Nagata, Brady Russell, Aaron Sipos, Brett Toth, Van Sumeren, Greg Ward, who will be on special teams for the rest of his life. But Britton Covey is one of those guys, like if we're going to use like an elevation on Sunday, they'll elevate both him and Aaron Sipos for games, I believe. Let Britton Covey continue to go out there and get killed on punt returns. Hope and pray that Aaron Sipos is. You know what? The thing that got me mad is we were always talking about how the Eagles don't value linebackers. Now they don't value special teams. Like we go from being disingenuous and negligent about like stocking a unit to stocking a phase.
Mm-hmm.
A unit is suffering now. So
I don't know what's up with that. Even somebody like Trey Sermon, who I thought played pretty well in special teams coverage, so he's a guy who did some different things, and he's gone. So I mean, I don't know what they're going to do. We have injuries to the special teams. We need the help there. I like Devin Allen. It's the speed. It's the speed, Jeff. When I was a kid before school, I used to always like be in this area. All the kids are hanging out, and I'd be like going up to kids like, "Hey, you want to race? Hey, let's race." Like I used to always want to race everybody because speed was my thing. So when I look at Devin Allen and that amount of speed, I'm like, we need to find a way to use that, man. Help that man learn how to catch that ball securely. and we got something special right there.
Gotcha.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. It's very hard to teach someone how to run faster, especially when the alternative is teaching them how to catch a football and follow your blockers. But, Devin Allen, he did have a pretty good return in the preseason,
Yeah.
and but
Yeah.
it's completely different when it's guys who seasoned special teamers who are going in there every time that they see an inexperienced kick returner. They're like, oh, it counts now. I'm gonna go in and try to take that guy's head off. That worries me about Devin Allen.
Gotta catch him first.
So how about some thoughts about the practice squad, guys? Like, what do you think about what they've done there? Now, one of the things that jumps out at you, they got 13 guys here. I'm gonna move that out of the way so we can see it. They got 13 guys here. They have a maximum of 16, and based off the rule they passed a couple years ago, they can have like 6 veterans, and regardless of team, those 6 veterans can remain on the practice squad. But they can still add 3 guys here unless they've. Like I said, I wasn't paying much attention to practice because we were getting ready for the broadcast, but 3 more guys can be added. Could they be familiar faces? Could they be somebody else? But pretty solid list here.
Joseph Nada. I don't know. We in the game he struggled with separation. He's always struggled with separation.
That's why he went undrafted.
Yeah, so I just don't know why we have to keep him. Is there no one else out there? There's a lot of people released around the league. We know some teams are better at drafting wide receivers than others. I actually have to give something like that to the Cowboys. I think that they draft, as much as I hate to give them any credit in any shape or form, but they're usually pretty good at drafting those types of skill positions. They didn't let any receivers go that might be a little better than Joseph Nada or the Bengals or I don't know. I don't understand why we need to keep that guy around.
Okay. You good on that,
Yeah,
Trevor?
I was a pretty big fan of seeing the guys on the practice squad. I felt like we got some guys who definitely have that upside, and maybe they just need another preseason to show that they can really fight for that extra roster spot or last roster spot. And some guys where, if you need them in a pinch, you can always call them up. One thing that stuck out to me is I'm really surprised there's not a running back on it, and it wouldn't surprise me if we, see who is released and try and see who clears waivers and try to get a guy from maybe a different team, maybe like a Myles Gaskin that got released from the Dolphins, who's had some experience playing a lot of downs in the NFL, or maybe if not, we'll bring back Kennedy Brooks and just stick him on the practice
don't bring
squad
back
for
Kennedy.
another.
Anybody?
I don't know. I was
I'm
very
listening to
surprised
Kennedy.
there's not a running back.
Huh?
I was just very surprised there was not a running back on that practice squad.
Yeah, I'm with you. I'm giving you a hard time, man. But Kennedy, I think it was a turnovers for me. I think Trey and Kennedy had like their shots and stuff, man. It just
but
it was no go out and get it. They just didn't go out and take it,
Yeah, I agree with you. I'll just say, like, if you still got 3 slots open and guys you either didn't expect to get released or did expect to get released didn't, or they choose to go to another practice squad, then maybe Kennedy Brooks is a guy who does come and fill that last spot just as a familiar face.
Good job, man. We'll go ahead and give you the buzz on that one. Good work. Any thoughts for you, Jaleel? Anything pop off of the practice squad and maybe like caught your attention?
No, other than the Joseph Nada thing. And like I said, I really thought that Trey Sermon should at least make the practice squad. I know he doesn't have to make the team outright, but I would have liked to see him on the practice squad. I think he still brings some. He could have brought some value to the team if we get into some sort of crunch.
Cool deal. Well, some of the observations I saw too, like I guess these are just some things that kind of stuck out to me and everything, because we'll obviously be talking about this to changes and stuff. But three quarterbacks, 4 running backs, 4 wide receivers. Again, like I'm starting to think about stuff that we've seen in practice and things of that nature. We've seen Grant Calcaterra downfield. We've seen him make some decent looking catches. They've seemed to be high on him. I personally, guys, I'm really not opposed to 4 tight ends. Like, so you got Dallas Goedert that can do everything. You got Jack Stoll, who has become a better receiver slightly, but I'm told blocks pretty well. But I think he's an average blocker. But I guess that's good enough for today's game. But not necessarily a great receiver. You got Greg Calcaterra, who is a decent receiver, but not really a great blocker. So we just gonna tip our hands here like Jack Stoll is just on the field and we know we're gonna run the ball, and if Greg Calcaterra is out there, we know we passing. Aquagian runs the 40-yard dash. Since we're talking about speed, nothing like a 6'5" guy who runs the 40-yard dash in 4.4 seconds. That's not somebody you want to see coming at you if you're a safety. But I'm cool with the 4 tight ends. I've seen Tennessee do it. How much is that fifth wide receiver going to play anyway? Maybe you do an elevation on game day if something happens to AJ, Devontae, Quez, and Olamide. I'm just going to give you my guys' takes, and I'll let you guys have it for a second. Kentavious Street, I feel like, is the first man off the roster, or maybe Mario Goodrich if another addition is added and added permanently. They're here now, but this is the initial 53-man roster. Some people call it the final 53-man roster, but it's the first. And this will change. And some of these guys who are on here may not be here. Patrick Johnson showed some flash as an edge rusher, and I'm glad he made the team because had it not been for an injury, he probably would have made the team anyway. So they're excited about him. Loaded along the defensive line, you got Fletcher Cox being the elder statesman now. Tracy Rocker has kind of asked him to be kind of a coach, which, Fletcher Cox doesn't want to be. And Fletcher Cox is probably not going to coach when he's done playing, especially after giving the NFL a decade. But it's been quite the mentor for these young guys and stuff. But if this is his swan song, it's good to have some nice stock in Jalen Carter, Jordan Davis, Williams, who I always think has played well when he's gotten an opportunity, just hadn't gotten a lot of opportunity. Mara Jomo's got a nice future ahead of him. And Marlon Tui Pelotu, I wrote about this a couple of days ago, but the Eagles are hell-bent on getting like a backup nose tackle. So that gives them some insurance just in case something happens to Jordan Davis is what they're hoping. But I like it. 3 linebackers kind of stands out to me, especially when you got like outside of Zach Cunningham, those other 2 guys have a grand total of 60 snaps or less. I think it's 58. So you got Zach Cunningham and 2 guys who have barely played. We talked about the cornerback situation in detail, the safeties in detail. The special teamers are fine. You need a holder again for Jake Elliott. But another thing that I think that stands out to me before I kind of let you guys have it is we got 4 defensive backs, if you notice, who were undrafted rookie free agents. Reed Blankenship, Josh Jobe, Eli Ricks, Mario Goodrich. Keely Ringo is there by virtue of being a 4th-round draftee. But let's be real, fellas. Eli Ricks, Mario Goodrich, and Mekhi Gardner all outplayed Keely Ringo during the preseason.
Yeah, they definitely did. Eli Ricks had a really good preseason. The fans loved him, coaches loved him, like stat sheet loved him. Pro Football Focus gave him a really high grade, and that's a guy who really, really, I think more so than anyone else, really took the summer and earned that spot on the roster that he wouldn't have had anyway. And I personally thought, like going into it, I wrote an article predicting who would be the 53-man roster before the preseason started, and I thought Mekhi Gardner was going to be the one who kind of stepped up and had that breakout preseason, and it ended up being Eli Ricks. But it's just nice to see that one of those guys really took that opportunity to heart and made the most of it. And I got to agree with you, Jeff. I think Kentavious Street will be the first man off the roster. It's just so hard to go 7 men deep on defensive tackle, especially when we got the edge rushers that we do. And when you find a punter, sooner or later, a punter is going to have to take up that spot on the 53-man roster, whether if it's week 1 or week 3, but it's going to happen sooner or later. And overall, there wasn't a whole, like the thing that I think really surprised me the most was only 4 receivers. I really was expecting to see like maybe Covey as a return man stick in there at 5. But maybe that's another thing too. Maybe we do decide we don't need 7 corners either, and we do show Goodrich, show him maybe we get him on the practice squad, and that's kind of a strategy that we're taking. Is if we give every other team an opportunity to fill their practice squad, maybe we can go out and get someone, bring him in, and then maybe a guy that we were afraid wouldn't have initially cleared waivers can kind of come back in and be practice squad guy once it's a couple days before the season or even a couple weeks into the season. And like what you said at the 4 tight ends, that doesn't really bother me, especially with how much the Eagles do like to run the ball and should run the ball. If you can have a guy like Stoll who's going to come in there and block, Calcaterra who really realistically, I don't want to say can't block, but it is certainly not his strength. And then Alberto, he's got a pretty high upside. I think he could definitely compete to be the second tight end on that depth chart, even though it'll take him probably the whole season if he's got to learn the playbook and Jalen Hurts has to kind of gain confidence in him. But I'm not against 4 tight ends. I really think people are kind of buying a little too much into that, especially if you don't have a wide receiver if you don't have a guy who you're like, oh, this is no doubt a fifth wide receiver we want to keep, who has a really high upside, who definitely would get claimed on waivers. Why not have a 4th tight end if you're more confident in those tight ends?
Yeah, that's the thing. If since it's 4 tight ends, that's what makes it easier to deal with for receivers. I think in that regard, because and with those guys being able to do multiple things between catching and blocking. But the thing that just stands out to me the most is just the defensive tackles, that there being so many, and I just don't think that. I mean, I think we're pretty much on the same page in that regard. They're not all going to be here by the time that first game rolls around. I don't know who's the odd man out. Y'all are probably right about it being Contavia Street. Um, but that kind of plays into what I was saying a little bit about maybe them wanting that extra time to evaluate those guys before they make a final decision. Um, and that's why they were, willing to do something like cut Aaron Sipos, knowing that he was going to clear waivers. Um, Aaron said, are you concerned about only carrying 4 receivers? No, no, because Devontae Smith and AJ Brown have shown themselves to be really durable thus far. I mean, of course, anything could happen in football. It's a physical game, but all these guys have shown, and since Sirianni's been here, everybody's been able to stay pretty healthy. And like I said, with the number of tight ends we have, that gives us the ability to still roll out some different packages and be effective in more versatile ways. So I'm good with that.
I didn't see 12 personnel, 2 tight ends coming from Brian Johnson, but you never know. Maybe we can get 2 tight ends out there.
Hmm.
First of all, drop a bomb on Jaleel for some excellent work there, man. But also too, Aaron, what we were kind of saying before before you actually came on was we're actually thinking that Britton Covey probably, at least for the first 3 weeks of season, would be placed on the practice squad, but then elevated and everything. But I personally am not worried about the 4 wide receivers. If we got like tight ends that we can probably like split out. I mean, you can put Dallas Goddard in the slot positions. You can do the same thing with a Quabianum. Like I'm just gonna call him. I don't know if I'm calling what his mama called him or not, but Alberto. I'm just gonna stick with it. But you can kind of use some of those guys, maybe like a 5th receiver. But then 9 times out of 10, Travis, to be honest with you, man, 5th wide receivers don't do much on the roster anyway.
Yeah, really. I feel like your 5th wide receiver is someone who you really want to be either a season backup or just with wheels that can be a punt returner. And, we didn't really have that undisputed. Everyone loved them, including like coaches, fans, stat sheet. We didn't really have that as a 5th wide receiver and as a returner. And maybe that's a guy we go out and get, like I mentioned earlier. The Dolphins did cut. It's Robbie Chosen or is it Chosen Anderson? I'm not quite sure what he changed his name to, but it's something with Chosen in there. And that's a guy, he's from Temple. He's a guy who's familiar with the area. Maybe he decides to have a little homecoming and he's got wheels on him. And the Dolphins definitely didn't need a fast receiver. It's pretty one-dimensional of him, but we could take him in, maybe make him a punt returner, a kick returner. I'm not sure who else got cut. I didn't really have the full chance to look over it all yet. It's been kind of a busy day, but that was a name who kind of stuck out to me as maybe potentially we bring him in and see if he can be a returner.
Yesterday was a wild day, man. Like my head is still spinning. I'll probably be tightened up by Friday and everything, but there was so much going on. Johnny says I think 4 wide receivers and 4 running backs are good. 3 tight end, but I'm an offensive guy. I like to build up the offense. But overall, I feel we are going to go all the way. I just hope the NFL shows more of the Eagles games this year than what it did last year, because that was bullshit when it hit us last year. Just because he used bullshit to say this, we just appreciate you, John. Appreciate you for hanging out with us, and appreciate everybody that's kind of hung out with us tonight. Anastasia, Rayshawn, John, who else? Johnny, Jared, Timothy, Aaron, you guys all rock. We appreciate you taking time out of your Wednesday to hang out with us and stuff. Final thoughts? What you guys got?
Cole Beasley's out there. Bring him back to the NFC East.
Cole Beasley.
No, I'm just kidding. He is crazy, and not in a good way.
He has carved out a career for himself, man. Like, for real. I keep waiting on him to go away, and he never does.
Yeah, I know, right?
Yeah, no.
I got a little something. So I wrote the article that we talked about earlier about the people who are going to make the roster that may not deserve it, and one of the people I put on that list was Boston Scott. Now, listen, I understand that everybody loves Boston Scott. I even wrote in the article that I understand the love for Boston Scott. But I just need everybody to realize that when I write something in an article, I mean it. Okay, I mean it. We don't do clickbait here at Inside the Eagles. We only write what we mean. Okay, so don't tell me I don't watch the games. Don't tell me that I don't know the history of the Eagles. I had a guy hit me up in my Facebook DMs, found me on Facebook, and wrote
me. You got the firestorm. I saw the firestorm.
I'm telling you, this dude wrote me a message like this long about why I was wrong about Boston Scott, and during it, he told me something along the lines of. Your views are shared by a portion of the fan base that doesn't understand the history of this franchise. And I was like, what the hell does that even mean? How does that?
Darren Sproles fans.
That's a little excessive, obviously, but I do have one question, man. This is the thing for me. So this is just I'm just gonna throw it out there just for the sake of argument. You throw it up. I think the thing for me was it was like guys who are going to make the roster but don't deserve the opportunity. Like, are you really thinking like this Boston Scott doesn't deserve the opportunity?
I feel like Boston Scott has been on the team now for like 6 years, and he's been, this marginal French guy. Yes, he comes in every now and then and gives a little punch, but it's not a lot. It's not something that we can't move on from and see what else is out there. I don't understand why he has to be a lock every single year. I don't feel that strongly that his contributions can't be replaced, and so I think they should be.
I think it's two-sided with me. Like I feel like I like things about Boston Scott. He takes care of the football. He's durable. He doesn't get hurt. He does some things well. I think he runs the ball hard and stuff. So sometimes what I wonder is it a lack of opportunity? But then at the same time, if you ask yourself that, the question then becomes, is there a lack of opportunity because the coaches don't give him the opportunities because they don't trust him, or some of that nature? What you think, Travis?
I think Boston Scott, when we call upon him, especially late season, NFC East opponents, Giants, I personally am very emotionally attached to Boston Scott. I do love the little guy. I think, I kind of got to agree with you. Maybe he shouldn't be a lock, but also, it's hard to argue that he hasn't put a better career and better runs on film than a Trey Sermon or a Kennedy Brooks or anyone else out there, and I think, Jeffrey, you mentioned this earlier, there's not really too many fourth running backs in the league who have the resume Boston Scott has. And when you have the whole Giants fan base after we play him saying, can we just sign Boston Scott so we don't have to deal with him anymore? That's kind of something that sticks out as kind of funny, kind of something you want to have around, even if it is just sort of a meme at this point. It's still playoff game. The first drive, Sirianni made sure he got the end zone, Well, it was half Sirianni gave him the opportunity, and Boston Scott found his way to the end zone.
But we don't need Boston Scott to beat the Giants. So yeah, as funny as it is, I agree with you. But he's not a necessity. It's just for comedic relief at this point.
We needed him in 2019, that regular season finale, though. That we don't, I don't think we win that game without Boston Scott.
That was 4 years.
That was a long time ago.
He's a good decoy. He's like the boxer that spins his left arm and punches you with his right. That's kind of what Boston Scott is. Play the Giants.
Personally, though, I would like to thank you, though, Jaleel, because for the first time, I think in 5 years on Inside the Iggles, I was just happy that people were pissed off and it wasn't at me. So for the first time in my life, I was out of the woods. I was kind of jealous. They usually cussing me out and stuff. How did you take this from me? But great work there, man. Like I said, I mean, that's the fun of this thing. Football is subjective. We all have our differences of opinion and stuff. Like John, Lil, and I go back and forth about stuff all the time. Travis, you and I have gone back and forth sometimes. And John Lil, I don't think you noticed. I think Travis got mad at me a couple of times because Travis said some stuff. We debated it, and I took it out of the article anyway. I made an executive decision to override what Travis was saying, but it's fun though, man. I've always enjoyed the fact that y'all voices are powerful, but they're not like mine, and for that, definitely got to drop the ball. Excellent work as always, man. But Jaleel, thank you again, because for once I didn't feel the firestorm, man. Good. All right.
That's hilarious.
What else we got? That's it?
I think that's it.
All right.
We covered our bases.
Well, it's been fun. We got a roster now. We got a practice squad. We got some things to debate and stuff like that. And you know what? The cool thing about this is, the more they're sharing stuff and everything, it helps the traffic too. So, but it's been a great job by you guys tonight, man. I always enjoy when we get together and things of that nature. But so let's do it again on Friday. We were talking about whether or not we were going to do this or not. Then we decided, you know what? Maybe we should go ahead and do it anyway, because by the time Friday was going to roll around, most of this stuff was going to be irrelevant. There would be 10 more things to talk about. So probably good we did it.
Yes, indeed.
Never hurts to get some birds talking.
Yeah. Appreciate you guys for hanging out with us for the Inside the Iggles live broadcast. We'll see you guys on Friday, and go Birds.
Go Birds.
Go Birds.